consuming this broadcast, welcome to BasTalk, a podcast about every day at work, where we have no mumbo jumbo, no fluff stuff, no big yarn, no life changing or shattering advice. All we present to you, or well, what I present to you, is a set of things that happen at every day at work and then give you some things to think about. So after every episode, you will have, oh, I didn't think about it that way, and maybe revisit some of the decisions you've made and make your own choice. And as always, if you're all sorted, this does not float your boat, then that's fine too. I mean, love to hear your thoughts, how you're tackling such issues or similar issues, and happy to learn. Bus talk is work in progress at all times, and so makes no big tall claims of suddenly transforming your life. Anywho, as always, I have an interesting episode for you this week. This week, I am going to talk about the dreaded rejection at the last stage. This many a times people pass the first few rounds of interviews very enthusiastically, almost building, plans to land the offer and getting excited until they find out that they got rejected in the final obstacle. So we're going to do a little bit of deep dive to find out why people don't make the cut after having crossed, say, 3 rounds, 4 rounds, in many cases 5 rounds of interviews, where everybody said yes, go ahead, and they land up in the final round and you do not get hired. So why are you not getting hired in the final round? What seems to be the problem? Is it you? Is it the people? Is it the situation? What could be the problem statement? So without further ado, let's jump right in. So you aced every interview round, impressed the panel, and then the dreaded radio silence. You call them, they ghost you, they don't even respond. The same set of recruiters who were chasing you before you got shortlisted, and now they don't respond to you. They don't have the courtesy to call up and say that, well, I'm sorry, it didn't go through. Now, I wouldn't paint all recruiters like this, but suffice to say, majority follow this pattern. Part of the reason that happens is because people, the candidates who have not made it, get very defensive. Sometimes they get very agitated and angry, and I don't know, many recruiters have shared with me that they face very abusive language or sometimes very uh, difficult conversations, right? But that said, I don't think it's wise to not communicate. It's still good to communicate and say, hey, look, you're not a bad resource, you're not a bad candidate. It's just that we found somebody better and or more suitable. That's perfectly fine. And it also kind of tells the professionalism that you started a loop and you are closing the loop. You're not let it go on infinity. But that doesn't happen. And so my request, if there are recruiters listening to this, I know it might some candidates might be very nasty and job seekers might be frustrated, and you just give it a patient thought that maybe they're applying for a job because probably they need one. It's important to them, and it's only natural for them to feel a touch disappointed, don't you think? It's normal, right? I mean, they would have built some expectation, some enthusiasm, some excitement. Probably they were thinking of getting a salary bump, considerable hike, and you don't know their financial situation, their background. It's not that it's your responsibility, but you're dealing with humans. You're dealing with human emotions, people. Somewhere, probably, even if you find one or two, bad apples, as it were, where the guy is being obnoxious or something like that, majority would probably appreciate a phone call, especially if they have called back and you ghost them. That probably is not the right professional way to do it. So good thing is pick up the phone and say, hey, look, we tried. and it did work, but doesn't make you a bad candidate, and we will definitely keep you in the file. Even though that might sound academic in nature, it's a good thing because things change in an organization. And even for the effort that you've put in as a recruiter to coordinate, to sift, to shortlist, to almost coach and nurture this person, if there are other opportunities, then you could redirect them there. And that's how you build your network, right? And not look at your job as transactional. In India, the situation is that the volume of talent that is available can kind of give the impression to some of the recruiters that ये नहीं तो कोई और सही. If not this one, then somebody else. And it's unfortunate, but I hope things get better. Likewise, for the job seeker, if you have been rejected, learn to grow up. You can't win them all, and it's perfectly fine. You probably will need to sit back and reflect. And I know it's easy to slip into playing the victim card. That, oh my God, it's why me? I answered everything right, and I was the best. I was doing the same job, and so how could they not hire me? And those kind of things, right? And so there must have been some reason, as hard as it might be, must have been some reason that didn't land well, and didn't land well accurately enough, or didn't make enough impact that they chose someone else over you. So yeah, I just wanted to start off with that part of the radio silence. And there are instances where job seekers go into radio silence as well, so there is equal angst on either side. They don't pick up the phone, they don't respond, they just, especially when they've got the offer, but they're still shopping around for the alternative offer or a better offer, and they don't even bother to say, hey, look, I'm probably going to have to politely decline because while in my evaluation I found something better. They don't do that. And so it's bad professionalism on part of the job seeker to not keep the company informed. It doesn't bore too well about their professional work ethics, right? And so yeah, all these are debatable, and there could be other sides to the story and all that. But fair, but I'm just trying to keep things simple, as we always do in BasTalk, right? All right. So with all those things behind us, understanding the radio silence, let's dive deep into the hiring reality check. Why making it to the final round does not guarantee a job. So probably speak from a job seeker's perspective. If any of you are interviewing right now or looking to interview elsewhere and you're in the final round, or if you've just missed the final round, then some of this might give you something to think about. So uh, here's the situation, right? The common reasons for last round rejections. What could be the common rejections? So lack of differentiation stands out right at the top for me. I'll expand on that. What happens is, in the due course of 4 rounds or 5 rounds of interviews, you get found out. Your consistency in storytelling gets found out. The depth or the lack of depth gets found out, right? If you give 2 examples in round one for a particular situation, suppose you're getting interviewed for a people manager role, and you said, can you give me a couple of examples how you managed to resolve a conflict? And you give one example in round one in round two, and then in round three, you're repeating the same one of round one, and in round four, you're repeating the same. So you get found out. Now you can obviously contest and say, how many more conflicts do you want me to cite? Maybe I just had two to share. Fair point, I think, but give this a thought, right? That what they're ideally looking forward is your ability to handle a difficult situation. So your methodology to solve a conflict. Right? There are two resources equally competent, both have been your toppers or better performers, and there is one account which needs to go to either one of them. How will you choose one over the other? Why would one get a better preference than the other. And this is just one such example, but that could lead to a potential conflict. It could lead to a potential bad blood within the team. It could be branded as a manager favoring one particular person because the other person is disappointed that my account went to them, so how dare she, and all that. So, so over the course of 3, 4 rounds of interviews, it's always good to reflect on the role that you're applying and what could be the potential scenarios. So examples more than one are always welcome. Typically, I would have 3 examples. That's a fair number. And more importantly, I would stress on the mechanism and the framework to address a conflict. Like here, if given a situation, conflict situation between two people, here are the 3 things I normally try and do, and of course tweak depending on the specific situation. So what are the 3 things, 3 tactics, or 3 strategic angles that you want to take to ensure you minimize? You can't do away with conflict in a business, but can you minimize? They're also probably looking forward to a little more in the final round. They're thinking, well, you give me a tactical, and sometimes these things may sound very textbook kind of answers, especially if you're at the interviewing a slightly seniorish role. So when I'm saying seniorish, you're like at a 15-year mark, right? And so when you're interviewing for those kind of roles at a 15-year mark, they're looking for a little more than the textbook answer of I'll be fair and impartial and I'll balance. Those are the obvious answers. They want a little deeper insight into it. What could be the deeper insight? Like, how have you tracked performance over a period of time? How? They know the what. What they need to know is how. How have you tracked? How are you weighing one situation as against the other? Like, this is more important, that is less important. So I will prioritize this person over that person and then make it up like that. And here's how it eventually worked out. So sometimes when you give that example of conflict resolution and you say, well, in this instance, while this person was deserving, I had to give the other person this particular account simply because it was his turn or her turn to get it. Whereas the maturity that I expect from this person is to take the higher ground. But I did make sure, because it's not a one-off instance or incident, that by the end of the year, the points are balanced. Like when they look back in the year gone by, then probably neither of the candidates, neither of the teammates would say, well, I was given a raw deal. We kind of eventually made it. So managing those subtle equations, and I think organizations are looking for replicability. Can you replicate that in the existing environment? And clearly you won't have in-depth understanding of how their situation is and the complexities and all. They know. They're kind of viewing it from their lens, that if this person came into this team, then here are the 2 things they're going to face right up. Classic, say, stakeholder and country leadership. Could be a stakeholder, could be in Singapore or US or EMEA, and you could be in India. How do you balance these 2 entities as a manager? Because you want to ensure that you are not misaligned with your country leadership thoughts, but you also want to be part of global leadership visibility. Now, oftentimes, what works globally needs to be tweaked locally. And that's where sometimes there is a conflict. Not that they want different things for the company. It's like the manner of executing those things are slightly different. And so, how do you as a manager manage these complexities is what they're trying to know. So by the time you're at the 5th round, this story gets found out. Like, so this is where you differentiate yourself. Probably, can I probably say this, that save the best for the last, right? uh, you want to, I mean, there's a counter argument to that, right? You could say, you want to start off with a bang, where in your first round you impress the hell out of people. And people are like, wow, this is the guys that can sign off tomorrow, skip the round, skip to the good part and all that. No. So yeah, the first round could be very exciting, where you give them enough material that they pull you to the next round, and then have
the best for the last. If you do, or if you have that rich content with you, where you can step up every single round, that's ideal. No two ways about it, right? So first round, you gave something good. Next round was great. Next is excellent, and then the final round is mind blowing. Something like that. But if you don't have, and many of us don't have that kind of rich content, so you have to know how to balance and juggle your best bits. Or it could well be that you go back to your first example and give that additional insight that you did not in the first one. And that is your aha moment. You do want to have an aha moment in the final round. Like, wow, this guy just, raised the bar right now. And that there is a differentiation. Right there, you said the same thing, but you added a delta x extra. While I managed this conflict between these two individuals, I also ensured that the due recognition comes to them in time rather than delayed. And I made sure that they were recognized for the sacrifice of the maturity that they showed instead of cribbing and fighting. That holds very good in my books. And so, stuff like that, you want to highlight, amplify that here is my differentiator. And many a times people will remember that bit. It's unfortunate sometimes that, as you progress through round 1 to 5 or round 1 to 6, it is also sometimes treated as a elimination process rather than a selection process. It's a company to company thing, right? Do you want to move these people from a elimination standpoint? Oh, now you said something wrong, done, bad hire, get out. And I'm just being dramatic. That's for drama, but the message being, well, if you answered something which is not in line with what exactly I need, then you don't get hired. That's one thing. It's a theory of elimination. Theory of selection would be that, okay, the she's saying this, it's probably not in line with what typically works here, but is there merit in that argument? Can that work? And that is so much dependent on the maturity of the hiring manager, which is I've always ad nauseum repeated. Don't put anyone and everyone to interview, right? There has to be people who have been well vetted within the organization, who should be allowed to represent the organization in front of an external candidate who has a neutral, unbiased, mature point of view and has the ability to find talent in the middle of the ocean of conversation that is presented in front of them, right? And so, okay, that is a spark right there. Can I make that? You know, it ties to the fact that it's not that you want a ready-made person, right? Like it's completely fit, fine, plug, play. Yes, that should be the goal, but you also should be thinking and I'm thinking like a people manager right now. What could I make this person become in a year, 2 years time? Where could I take this talent in 2 years time? Can I elevate? Can I make a bigger business impact with this talent, with the way the person is addressing the situation? So it's just not what the person is answering specifically, but the answers around it. Sometimes, unfortunately, even at many mid senior, senior levels, people interviewing lack this maturity. I think it's a problem statement that the industry needs to recognize, that they don't have that maturity to select talent. It could be to do with the fact that there's so much more alternative profiles that are available. Who really wants to wait and watch? Let's just move on and see the next one, and then reflect back and all that. But yeah, I organizations need to define the theory of selection versus theory of rejection, or process of selection or process of rejection. So back to you as a candidate, make that differentiator by the final round, and hopefully you will score over the other person who gave exactly the textbook answers and all that. Okay, next, unconvincing executive presence, body language, tone, confidence gaps, and all that. Oftentimes, I've found that candidates, job seekers, are not switched on at the interview. They're shifting, fidgeting, fiddling, fixing the camera, doing this audio. You have to be ready 15 minutes before the interview. I mean, seriously, if you're that serious about the job, you've got to play the part. You've got to look sharp, you look smart. There's no negative marking for being formally dressed. I find people in pajamas. Yes, you're taking the call from home, but you don't want to be in a round neck t-shirt and hair ruffled. But you have solid content, so sometimes the body language, the tone, the confidence, the look, people are trying to visualize. They don't know you. They're trying to visualize you as an executive in the company, how a regular person is working in on the production floor right now. So they're trying to visualize you. Are you the person who's going to blend in? Are you going to stand out like a sore thumb, right? So turn up is the net of the story, right? So executive presence, body language, you have the right tone. You're not uh, most challenging in the one of the most challenging things that I've faced during interviews is people give long-winded answers. I've also been in situations where they've given such short answers that you almost felt that they were not interested. So you see how it cuts both ways, right? So how do you then find the balance, right? You to read the room. How do you read the room? So when they've asked you an open-ended question, like, so how did you manage to make this team successful? Then you classically would follow the star format, right? Here's the situation, here's the task, this is the action that I took, and this was the desired outcome or result. If the person is losing interest, you will see they're looking here and there, or they go, when they want you to stop, you will hear them saying, while you are speaking and you're delivering the answer, they will go, yeah, 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 yeah. So that means they're done. Like they're already ahead. They've kind of figured out that you know the answer, or it could be that they are absolutely disconnected with the answer that you're giving or the example that you're giving. So it's always okay to take a pause and say, hey, do you want me to follow the same pattern, or do you want me to keep it shorter? Do you want me to elaborate more? I know there will be some cheeky guys who will say, that's your call, it's your interview and all that. But hey, it's okay to understand how you would like to hear the information, because if you're, say, at a 10-year mark or a 15-year mark, you clearly have some stories to share. It can't be, the toughest thing is to compress 15 years of work X into like a 5-minute conversation or a 3-minute answer. Very difficult, right? I mean, so that is a rehearsal you've got to do well before the interviews. How, some of the common questions. How are you going to present this information? Basis what? And what are the highlights in that? What is the hook line in that? What is the aha moment in that? These are the prep uh, pre-preparations. Preparation is pre-planning is what you need to do, and then present your story. It comes out as sharp and smart conversations. I think the technique is mirroring the interviewer. If you see that the interviewer has low attention span, then you keep your answers short. If the interviewer says, can you tell me more, then they're looking for a longer answer. And so have that flexibility, and so have that content rehearsed before you say that, right? So very important to understand the way you're delivering the conversation. Long-winded is generally not preferred. 20-second, 30-second answers is a good first point check. Do you want me to continue and share some more? Is a good check to see if they are listening. you know but not to sound arrogant, right? Don't do it so many times that they think, what's wrong with this person, right? I'm taking an interview, they're supposed to talk, and why are they repeatedly asking me, should I say more? Of course you're going to say more. So it's such subtle, there's so many nuances to it. It's not a black and white prescriptive conversation. So keep these points in mind while you present yourself. Okay, next, one of the prime reasons, which is very uh, debated often is the culture fit alignment or misalignment. You don't fit culturally. Yes, you have a similar job description, probably understand what's going on in the business, but you don't get into that culture. And give you a great example. I loved doing presentations on PowerPoint and all that, but I was always asked to follow the template. The template was mundane and boring. I just love to explore the real estate on a PowerPoint template. Every now and then I would get a rap on my knuckles saying, well, this is the template and follow the template. And I would probably come up with something different. And it's not that just for the heck of presenting a pretty slide. It was a impactful. So I don't believe in 75 slide kind of presentation. And I'm talking about very early, right? Early days. You're talking about 2003 or 4, or when PPTs were the order of the day and 100 slides was quite normal, and those kind of things. So I wanted to keep it to like a 3 slider or 2 slider, something like that, which was not quite acceptable. But then fast forward a few years, I landed up in a situation where I could play around with the real estate a little bit better. But I realized that I'd found, you know, uh, a slightly different way of treating the same problem. Now, then I landed up in a situation where there were no PowerPoint slides. And I was like, wow. So you see how the culture changes. On one hand, when they want you to do a template, you want to do something different. Then you are in an organization where you can do whatever, that you have a different understanding of how you want to make a presentation. And then when you are probably nearing mastery of it or become good at it, you get into situations where there's no PowerPoint. Um, and so it's a culture thing, right? So the culture alignment, there are organizations which want you to have an element of cognitive ability, like and we have had this discussion on BasTalk many times between experience versus ability. There is some people value the years of experience that you bring to the table. Some people say ability is greater than the number of years that you bring to the table. So it's a culture fit that people are evaluating in the final round, that will this person, and that comes out with the choice of words that you've used. So you're applying for a role which requires high degree of collaboration. And then you say, I want autonomy. I want to be, if you leave me alone, I'll do a fabulous job. And that will completely put people off. Right? Like, oh my God, this person. But again, it's to do with the selection and rejection thought process. And can't probably hold the company responsible, because, I mean, look, I'm just asking you, this is a collaborative role. If you need to work with 10 different stakeholders and you want to be left alone, how does that compute? Right. So be acutely aware of what the role requires you to do, not just the job description, but how does the role sit within the organization? How does it interlock with other departments? Who does it impact? To what degree? To what extent? These are the questions you want to ask, right? That what is the impact of my role in so I'm applying for a sales role. How does this impact the marketing team? How does this impact the channels team, the delivery team, the back end team? I don't know, the billing team. Could you highlight? So stuff like that. So it's important to be sensitive, be cognizant of what the role requires you culturally over and above the job description. Right? So culture alignment is one of the reasons, which is why people get rejected in the final round. Next, salary expectations and negotiation mistakes. Many a times when and job seekers get carried away very quickly, right? They find that, and you get the gut feel, right, that it's going to work out. You get positive signs, indications, and then you land up overpricing yourself. The role you probably is at $100,000. You say, oh, I think I'm good for $200,000 or something like that, and you present yourself as out of reach, untenable, as if you're doing a favor. You're like God's gift to humankind. And therefore, I mean, you present yourself as someone very high and mighty, and instead of plain simple confidence. And it's a very thin line. Right? You just tip over to the other side, and it completely backfires, and you're in the final round. And I think if the person uh, is so hard, because you know how it is in organizations. For every role, at every level, there is a low, median, and high. By the negotiation is between so if 100 is the median number, low is 90, and 110 is the high. People will probably start with 90, 95, and try to put a anchor on 100 and see if you wilt under pressure or you agree. And that's a hard pull and push and pull. Unless in very rare circumstances you present yourself as this person deserving of 110. You see, if you suddenly say 200, then maybe you're a job level misfit, and that also could be a reason to get rejected. Like, oh, okay, this guy doesn't look like a manager category. This probably is like a senior manager, and we don't have an opening for senior manager. This person will get frustrated if we hire them even at 110 as a manager, and they might get frustrated in 6 months time, and so it could lead to a problem. And so knowing how to present yourself from a commercial standpoint, and and it's difficult, I give you that. It's very difficult to know what is that company's above median. Can you, your sweet spot is 105, right? 100 is the median, 105. If you land 110, good for you, but you won't never know it, right? You probably won't get to know. But I'm just saying it as a from a recruitment standpoint. A recruiter would be happy to push for 102, 103. The moment it gets closer to 110, it requires additional approval. It requires executive insight and convincing, and whole bunch of other things. And they get a pushback saying, your KRA is to find a top talent at a lower cost. Why are you asking me to get higher cost? So it's one of being a sore points, a sensitive point, let's put it this way, for many a top recruiter, that they do manage to find a top talent after hundreds and hundreds of rejections and screenings. And finally, when you do find someone and the company says, no, I can't give you that budget, and you lose that candidate, and then when you find a less than optimal candidate at the desired price, they're not as good enough, and they leave. And then the recruiter is put to task that, well, you're not hiring well. These are very, very tough and difficult and delicate conversations which continue in every organization, I guess. And so pricing yourself correctly or incorrectly can lead to a rejection in the final round. Next, last but not the least, I think, I mean, there's so many, but I'm just trying to pick a few. Decision making and problem solving failures. Like, how do you assess a problem? Handling case studies and real world scenarios. And I touched upon it a little bit earlier as well. Like I said, over a course of 5 rounds, you will be found out of your authenticity, of your consistency, of storytelling, of your examples, of the narrative that you choose, and so on and so forth. You falter there, then in the final round, you get found out. And so always have one ace up your sleeve. That's what will set you apart. It ties into the lack of differentiation bit also, but the decision making, people want to see or hire people who need the least amount of ramp up time, less hand holding. And if you're presenting yourself as, once I get the job, I will learn on the job and I'll show how good I am because that's what I did here, might also turn out to be a reason for rejection. You're looking to hire people who speak the language, who have a short ramp up time and can hit the ground running. And to do that, the ability to make quick decisions, firm decisions, clear decisions. I think hiring managers love thought clarity, simplicity and thought clarity. They also dislike oversimplification. It almost makes it sound trivial. Oh, 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 no sweat. $100,000. Yeah, I could do that target in not just 1 quarter. I could do it in 1 week. That's trivializing something without understanding the business. And so, important to handle real world scenarios. Give or state transferable skill sets. Look, here are the 2 or 3 things that I do in my current role, which I can use it in this given role. This is what I understand about the job description, right? And so that's more or less a few reasons for last round rejections. If you have some more to discuss, if there's some very funny or unique, and it can't be funny if you got rejected in the last round, it does leave a sore taste in the mouth, right? I mean, you kind of really wanted that role if you've persevered till the last round. Share some of those examples in the comments and in the voicemail, or where to reach me on www.bastalk.in, that BASTALK.in. You can reach me on LinkedIn. You can reach me if we have a BasTalk Telegram and a WhatsApp group. If you are so keen, then drop me a note on LinkedIn with your number and say I want to be added to BasTalk, and I will get you added to the group. Nothing. It's just that when the episode is published, it first goes to the WhatsApp group, and then it gets to everyone else. So your call. And what happens is that little more engagement in that group, right? So sometimes I post a poll and all that. So these kind of episodes will have a poll at the end. If you're listening on Spotify, we'll have a poll at the end of the episode. And sometimes people answer those queries, and many times people forget. Anywho, just to conclude, right? So, cracking the final interview, I think craft a memorable closing statement in the final round. Crack a memorable closing statement. Think about it, right? Reflect on some of the last interviews that you have given and not made it. What was the most memorable thing you said? Is that impressive? Does it hold today? Like, memorable statements are not show off statements, right? Memorable statements are how you manage to succeed despite the odds stacked against you, which is relevant for that organization, which is relevant. It can't be, yeah, it was difficult for me, but the organization that you're applying to is like, yeah, so what? And they're going to like, yeah, that doesn't make any difference to us. Not that kind of memorable statement, right? Um, and the memorable statement is almost like a culmination rather than one headliner statement. Culmination being your overall packaging, your body language, the way you present, the way you answered, the way you conducted yourself, and then you end the final round or the final question with a bang. With a but let me just tell you this one thing that I'm really proud of, and I really hope I get another chance to replicate it, or something which has a touch of humility, but the difficulty, and without again going through a long-winded one paragraph and stuff like that. Kind of a 1 or 2 liners is good. So this requires practice. It could look very fake. Warning alert. It could look fake, made up, and that could completely ruin all the good work that you've done. But if it comes out organically, naturally, and that comes out of practice, you have to practice speaking it. Um, so, so crafting a memorable closing statement generally would help the cause. Asking the right questions, the final, you. I just want to make sure you understand. I just want to make sure that you have got the answers to all that you were looking for. Or did you want me to revisit any other example or point which was probably needed a little more in-depth analysis or response? So you're basically asking the person is, do you want to revisit the question that you didn't like my answer to? And if they're in a mood to give you a second chance, they'll bring that up, right? And so um, it helps because it's the top of the mind recall. They've been speaking to you for 40 minutes, and you've been asked that question in the end, that do you have any question for me, and then you say, hey, would you like me to revisit any of those points in the last 40 minutes? So whatever that is not clicked for them in the preceding 40 minutes, that's on the top of the mind recall. Usually that comes out first, so you know this is the question you did not answer well. You may want to give a slightly different answer to that's a clear sign. And then, of course, the last is, of course, the power of follow up. Do send a thank you note, request a, and it's a great forum to say, would you be comfortable if I asked you for a LinkedIn invite? Would you be open to accepting my invite? And I would love to be in touch with you, no matter how this interview turns out. And it's a chance. And then you say, once they give you the acceptance, you say thank you for giving the opportunity, and in the note section, great speaking to you. So there is a communication channel which is established. And even if you didn't make the cut, always thank them for their time and say, I'll stay tuned, I can revisit at a different time to look for another opportunity, because probably I could have done something different or better. It's a nice thing. Most likely they won't respond, but I do think a lot of leaders take note of the fact that you, as a professional, completed the loop, which is a good thing. Which is I'd appreciate that, instead of just disappearing. No, you didn't give me a job, then you're not worth my time. It's not like that. It's a small world. Make no mistake. We land up people that we met earlier or interviewed with earlier, more frequently than you'd like or imagine. Cool. That's it. Yeah, that's all the time that I had for this episode of Bus Talk. I hope you uh, you got something to think about. And if you've been rejected, if you've been not shortlisted or not landed the dream job, don't get disheartened. Remember, separate the personality from the role. They're not rejecting you, the person, the personality, the identity. They're probably the role is what you couldn't make a fit. So don't underestimate your talent or potential. Right, the fact that you made it to 5 rounds, and it's not a consolation thing, right? It's a positive reinforcement. Believe it, that it's a good thing. So analyze that feedback, go back and assess what could you have done differently, where's the gap. And if you're so lucky to get some constructive feedback from the recruiter, then that would be the best. But it doesn't happen much. Hmm? And for the next interviews, you try and raise the bar and up the game, because more or less, if you're applying for similar roles in other organizations, pretty much going to get the same questions with a different cultural tone to it. So yeah, so think about it. I hope I gave you some things to think about, and would love to hear your stories, really. And if someone is really stuck, and I know there would be some unfortunate incidents, but despite you doing all the right things, you still didn't make the cut. And yeah, remember that bad debt theory, right? That when you exit your career, there will be about 10% bad debt that happens. That when shit hits the fan, you just can't do anything about it. But remind yourself that you did well 90% of the time. At 10%, forget about it. Move on. Life, one of the biggest advantages we have is that there's always the next chapter, next step, and it's not a cliche. It is true. You have to get a move on as quickly as possible. It also is a test of your character. That how do you handle rejections? How do you handle failure? And how do you quickly gather yourself up and not wallow in self-pity and go down the spiral and play the victim card and all that stuff. Not cool there. It build mental resilience. Till we meet the next time, friends, I hope you take good care of yourself. Talk to your friends, talk to your colleagues, trust people. These are all counterintuitive things I say. But yeah, trust your mate and start at 10, right? And keep up your end of the bargain. Hopefully, when we meet next time, I will have a new episode for you. Pardon me if there are any gaps because a whole bunch of things happen, but I will promise to continue this. I'm not giving up on BasTalk. Trying to finish the book. My nice friend editor, again, very courteous of him to reply and saying, let's revisit and close the damn thing out. And I was like, yeah, we'll do that. Cheers. So until next time, take care, stay well, stay safe. This is your host, Ayan, and you were tuned in to BasTalk. Have a great week ahead. Ciao.